Welcome back everyone to Data Science for Everyone. Today we're going to be looking at how to define research. Let's get started. So first let's talk about a little bit of the introduction on how we're talking about the organizational structure of quantitative and qualitative research. So we've developed some sort of theoretical framework about research from our literature review. And then the next step that we want to do is look at the theoretical framework to construct a conceptual framework. Okay, so both of this is from qualitative and quantitative research demand. We want to do the development of a theoretical and conceptual framework. After this conceptual stage, we have two approaches to begin to move forward in some other discrete fashion. So here we're going to outline the divergence that takes place at this stage in the research. If it has not already done so, at least in the mindset of ourselves, the researcher. Now, the theoretical framework covers the theories, concepts, and issues which surround our chosen topic. It needs to be narrowed down as not every one of those theories, issues, or concepts will relate directly to our investigation. So, designing conceptual framework. There will be a number of factors influencing us at this stage. Now, on our own agenda, external requirements, resources available to us, and to say the least, and also our own experience of research. Now, essentially, the research question should itself determine the design of our study. But it is usually the case that naturally qualitative researchers ask questions such as why, how, and what, and quantitative researchers ask questions like how many, how often, and where. Now let's talk about a research hypothesis. A hypothesis must be a proposition that implies a relationship between two or more concepts, which is located on the lower level of abstraction and generality than the theory, and which enables the theory to be transformed into terms that can be tested empirically. In quantitative social research, it is also quite troublesome to make claims that prove that there is some link or relationship between variables. Experimental research is close as we can get to this, but even then, it is difficult to abstract one element or even a few elements of that subject under study while holding everything else constant, or ceteris paribus. Hypothesis testing is the only carried out in quantitative and positivist research. Qualitative or interpretist research will accumulate in the generation of working hypotheses, but it is not the driving force behind the research design. Devising and testing hypotheses is useful in most quantitative research. It is an essential part of statistical inference. Hypothesis testing is an attempt to investigate the relationship between two or more variables. Defining variables. There should be three types of variables: nominal, ordinal, and interval, and that one is broken down into discrete and continuous. So our theoretical framework allows us to identify the concepts that we want to investigate in terms of connections and relationships. These concepts will provide us with the variables we need to construct the research hypothesis. Then, the operational hypothesis we will use to engage in empirical investigation. A nominal variable is one that can be classified by categories which cannot be ordered, such as gender or color. The variable value will have names. An ordinal variable is one in which the order of data points can be determined, but not the distance between data points. In an example, such as letters from A to B, the variable value will be the number, but only ordinal numbers. An interval variable is one in which both order of data points and distance between data points can be determined, as is the percentage of scores or distances. There are two forms of interval variables: discrete variables, which have a definite value and can be counted, and continuous variables, which can occur on an infinite number of points on a continuum, such as a tape measure. The variable value will be numbers with cardinal properties. Constructing your hypothesis. Hypothesis testing is deductive. The problem is stated, and then the data is collected in direct response to the stated problem. There is a rigid structure to this approach that dictates the empirical data collection. Now that we have our variables, it is going to be time to explain those variables and decide what is the relationship, if any, may exist and how we can test for its existence. As pointed out earlier, the responses or resources available to you, as well as the research question, may influence this decision, which is a limit to what kind can be done in a single investigation, so it is important to think very practically at this stage. The literature review may have already identified potential relationships between these variables. Constructing an experimental hypothesis. An experimental hypothesis will have three types of variables: an independent variable, a dependent variable, and an intervening variables. The independent variable is the condition that is manipulated by the researcher. The dependent variable is the effect of this manipulation. Intervening variables are all those things that a researcher has no control over. It is important to acknowledge that the potential impact of intervening variables on any research findings. In the majority of research within the natural setting, there is no manipulation of a variable. The independent variable becomes an existing condition. If this approach is appropriate to your investigation, then you have chosen a quantitative research design. This would then imply that your research design may include probability sampling. Research aims and scope. Hypothesis formulation is well known when you know exactly which variables are involved in your intended investigation, and you have decided how those variables will be counted and measured. What happens when you want to engage in an investigation that is not concerned with measuring or counting of anything? When your purpose is to investigate a particular phenomenon in rich detail, then it may be impossible to define variables before you begin the investigation. Even if you were aware of likely variables, the purpose of research is very different. Exploration becomes the focus of the investigation, not testing or measuring. Questions to ask. Questions to ask about your research question. Why am I doing this research? What is the purpose of this research? What do I hope to learn from this investigation? What do I need to know in order to provide an answer to my research question? And who can provide access to that knowledge? What will be the likely output of this investigation? How to use your answers. The answers to these questions allow us to frame our aims, and from that to construct the objectives of the investigation. The difference between aim and objective. An aim is concerned with the conceptual level of research and the overall purpose, which is not necessarily time and context bound. It is related to the wider research question and any intended research outputs. This answers the question, what is the purpose of this research? The aim is concerned with why and the what, why we are doing it, and what we hope to produce by it. The objective is concerned with how the research activity. This answers, how will I achieve my stated aim or aims? This is an operational list of activities that will guide the practical side of research. You could almost call it a task list, and so it is not surprising that most objectives begin with a verb. It helps constructing objectives to consider the types of words you should be using. Words such as examine, identify, and establish are usually the first words of a research objective. The operational list of activities will ultimately lead you to achieving your aims. In summary, at this stage in our research design, major decisions are made about the approach, the nature, and the purpose of the investigation. We have taken this same research question and looked at how it can respond to the question for each of the major research traditions discussed in our previous videos. Decisions are going to be based on the purpose of the research as well as the researcher's experience, preference, and understanding. It is vital that once these decisions are made, the purpose of the research is expressed in an appropriate and practical manner. If you are to achieve your research goals, then you must create a design that will lead to a logical and defendable outcome. Your research design must ensure rigor or trustworthiness depending on your chosen approach. If you like this video, please comment, subscribe, and hit that like button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.